Good morning. Just doing a test.
Hi, everybody. Everybody is here, so we are ready to begin. Go ahead, Counselor Nunziata.
Good morning. I'm Frances Nunziata, City of Toronto Councillor for York South-Weston and Council Speaker, and George Balreen as part of York South-Weston community. Today's announcement is very exciting for the local community. I am joined today by the Honourable Ahmed Hussein, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development and Member of Parliament for York South-Weston, on behalf of the Honourable Catherine McKenna, Federal Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, the Honourable Laurie Scott, Ontario's Minister of Infrastructure, His Worship John Tory, Mayor of the City of Toronto, and Councillor Jennifer McKelvey, Councillor for Scarborough Rouge Park, and Chair for Infrastructure and Environment Committee. I'd like to invite Minister Hassan to speak on behalf of the federal government.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nunziata. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your introduction. I'm happy to join you all today on behalf of my colleague and friend, Minister Catherine McKenna, our government's Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, along with Minister Hogarth, Mayor John Tory, and Councillor Jennifer McKelvey. I'd like to take an opportunity to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from Toronto on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Depuis mars dernier, les Canadiens ont été affectés par les conséquences de la pandémie de la COVID-19. Since last March, Canadians have been impacted by the consequences and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. D'un ancien à l'autre, nous avons appris à gérer notre nouvelle réalité et le nouveau monde dans lequel nous vivons. From coast to coast to coast, we've been learning to cope with the new realities and the new world that we find ourselves in. And this has not been an easy time for many, but even as the situation continues to evolve, all orders of government across Canada are working together to reduce the impact of the pandemic, protect lives, support communities, and create well-paying middle-class jobs. C'est le temps de regarder vers l'avant. It's time to start looking forward again. It's time to build up and to do it in a way that makes our communities more livable, more resilient, and more sustainable places to live, work, and raise our families. C'est pourquoi j'ai le plaisir d'annoncer plus de 1,6 million de dollars en financement fédéral pour la réparation, la réhabilitation et l'amélioration de l'Arena George Bell à York South-Weston. That's why I'm so pleased to announce over $1.6 million in federal funding for the repair, rehabilitation, and improvement of the George Bell Arena right here in my community of York South-Weston. Investing in community, cultural, and recreational infrastructure is an essential part of growing our economy and providing communities and Canadians with more options to connect, express themselves, and support one another. This is about ensuring our community has a place to come together and enjoy sports and recreation while fostering active living, social cohesion, and community building. Facility renewal is also necessary to extend infrastructure life, reduce operating costs, and increase facility efficiencies. This fosters a sustainable arena supply that addresses the changing needs of Torontonians. By investing in projects like the George Bell Arena, we are supporting the creation of more accessible and welcoming community and cultural spaces. Nous rassemblons les Canadiens pour apprendre et explorer tout en créant des emplois et croître l'économie locale. We're also bringing Canadians together to learn and explore while also creating jobs and growing the local economy. Today's announcement is another great example of how working with our partners across the country can make a positive difference in the lives of so many Canadians. C'est un investissement pour aujourd'hui et pour demain. So it's an investment for today, but also for tomorrow. By investing in community and cultural infrastructure today, we're putting a down payment on more connected and resilient communities where Canadians can live, grow, and raise their families for many generations to come. And together, I know we will continue to make it happen. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Now I'd like to invite the Honorable Laurie Scott, Ontario's Minister of Infrastructure, to provide comments.
Well, thank you, Francis. I'm going to actually step in for Laurie Scott. The Minister Scott's not here today. So my name is Christine Hogarth. I'm the MPP in Etobicoke Lakeshore, and I am thrilled to be here. You know, we've been making a habit of these great announcements for our wonderful city that we live in. And I'm pleased to stand in for our Minister of Infrastructure and on behalf of the Ontario government to announce more funding for these amazing facilities. And today we're announcing $1.3 million in provincial funding for repairs and upgrades to the George Bell Arena in Toronto. Our funding will help with extensive roof replacements, mechanical and electrical upgrades, and arena equipment refurbishment. This much needed work will also make the arena more accessible, both inside and out. These upgrades will extend the life of the arena, reduce operating costs, and provide recreational opportunities for community members of all ages and abilities. Over the years, the George Bell Arena has been home to many Canadian icons. In the 1960s, it was the practice rink for Toronto Maple Leafs, and both Gordie Howe and his son Marty both played there on the ice. It's host to men's and women's and youth hockey leagues year-round, as well as other sports. The George Bell Arena provides a location for Toronto's Western residents to participate in some of Canada's favorite ice sports. As the COVID-19 pandemic clearly has highlighted, investments in health and wellness of Ontario is more critical than ever. Our March 2021 provincial budget released in March builds on a record investments made in response to the global pandemic to produce people's health and our economy. Ontario's total COVID-19 action plan now totals $51 billion, supporting cultural and recreational infrastructure projects like the George Bell Arena helps to protect our communities, making them stronger, more accessible, healthier, and safer. I am delighted that Toronto residents and visitors will benefit today from our joint announcements. The Canadian Infrastructure Program is providing up to $30 billion in total project funding for communities across Ontario over 10 years. And this includes our commitment of $10.2 billion from the provincial government. We are rebuilding the economy and creating healthy and safe communities across Ontario through our federal-provincial partnership. I would like to thank the City of Toronto, Mayor Tory, councillors, and our federal partners for your contribution to this meaningful project. And before I go, I know we all watched the Maple Leafs last night and will continue to cheer them on. Unfortunately, they didn't make it last night, but we all have, I'm sure, bets with our spouses and our friends that we're going to see, hopefully cross our fingers, a Stanley Cup back here in Toronto. And before the long weekend arrives, I just want to thank all our frontline workers who are vaccinating our citizens. You know, Toronto is doing such an amazing job getting vaccinations in arms. And I just want to encourage everybody out there to go get your vaccination. Please get your vaccination. And thank again all the hard workers who are working on the front lines. Have a safe, long weekend, everyone. And I think this is over to you, Mayor Tory.
Thank you. And our prayers go out to John Tavares as well. Hopefully he'll be back. Thank you. And I'd now like to invite His Worship John Tory, Mayor of the City of Toronto, to provide remarks.
Well, Francis, thank you, and Christine, thank you. And I'm just delighted to be here with Ahmed Hussein, an MP from Toronto, most importantly, I think, but also a minister. And we've been so fortunate to make so many announcements. I feel like I see him almost every day as we go and build supportive housing and do different things to advance the interests of the people of the City of Toronto who need our support. And the same is true of being here with Christine Hogarth, who is a fighter for Toronto and as MPP for the city. And of course, my two colleagues, Jennifer McKelvey, who's the chair of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee, and Francis Nunziata, the local councillor for this project today, and the speaker, and they're both fighters for people who live in the city of Toronto as well, and for these kinds of projects. And this one isn't as big, frankly, in terms of its dollar value as a transit announcement or a big housing announcement, but it's very, very important for some of the reasons that have been set out today. This is not only a historic arena, and I actually remember who Gordie Howe was, and it might be argued that he was the greatest hockey player of all time, and he's been kind of surpassed in a certain way by Wayne Gretzky and now maybe Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. But if you look at the schedule of the day and the equipment of the day and so on, what he accomplished was incredible, and he actually skated on the ice of the George Bell Arena, which was opened in 1961, and as was noted by Christine, used to be the place that visiting hockey teams would go to skate between games or in advance of games when they would practice. And so it's a very historic place, but more important than the history with NHL players, including Gordie Howe, this is the home of the George Bell Hockey Association and countless, pickup leagues and beer leagues and free skating that happens and so on. And the arena is 60 years old. And, we've had a habit, we meaning collectively governments going back, of postponing investment in places like this that need to be made to keep it going for another 60 years so that it can be the home to all the people who like to enjoy using the George Bell Arena. And this is a part of town where, there are people for whom these recreational and other kinds of facilities are particularly important. And it's why I'm so pleased that we're taking part in this announcement today. And of course, the other thing that makes me very happy is anytime I can go. It's just a part of who I am and how I've tried to be the mayor. Anytime I can go to announcements that show all three governments working together and contributing together, that's a happy day for me, because I know that what we're doing is that we're all doing something for the people we all collectively serve with money that, frankly, we've collected from the very same people. And so in that respect, I think that it is important to keep these facilities up. It is important for us to invest in our public assets and keep them in proper shape so people can use them and make their life better. But it's also important in terms of creating jobs. As we come out of this pandemic and we enter into a recovery period, these kinds of jobs, fixing the air conditioning and fixing the accessibility and fixing up that snack bar that raises money to pay for the George Bell Hockey Association activities, these are very important investments that we can make that do create jobs and create lasting benefits. And in this case, you've been told today, and I'll just recite it so that you know the three numbers put together, that you've got all three governments contributing close to $4 million to do these repairs. The City of Toronto is contributing $1 million, and I'm very proud to say that on behalf of the committee that approved it, Jennifer McKelvey's committee, and on behalf of the Toronto City Council. The Government of Canada, $1.6 million, as Minister Hussein indicated, through the recreation infrastructure stream, and then the Government of Ontario at $1.3 million. So these are significant contributions that have us all doing this together. And I think people really like to see that. And it's going to fund the roof replacements and the mechanical upgrades and the different things to make this place more accessible than it presently is. So I just want to conclude by saying thank you, because it goes all the way to the top. These programs wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the support of Prime Minister Trudeau and Premier Ford, because they lead the way in making sure they say yes to programs like this that then in turn lead down the road to grants specifically to fix up the George Bell Arena. And I want to say thank you to the local representatives, including in this case, Francis, who's fought hard for this, and as well as the minister who's with us today, who's the local MP. And finally, just to conclude by saying this, I want to just echo what Christine said. This is every weekend has been important as we fought the pandemic and as we have, taken ourselves now on the road to reopening that's been laid out very clearly by the provincial government. And we have in the City of Toronto 14,000 appointments that are available for this weekend, this holiday weekend, across Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Why wait for spring? Spring's already here. Why wait for summer? Do it now. Get vaccinated. And if you have been vaccinated, then speak to someone who hasn't, because every vaccination happens in the City of Toronto pushes us on the way to achieving the provincially required number of 60% to get us to that first day when we can start to open up those patios and open up some of those additional things that people want to see open. Some of the stores can get back in business. And so I'm asking people to take advantage of the opportunity with the 14,000 appointments we know exist to sign up now. And please be healthy and safe on the Victoria Day weekend, the holiday weekend, which includes obeying the remaining public health restrictions, which are still there to keep us safe and keep us healthy, because that will too get us on the way to achieving the targets that are set out in the roadmap set out by Premier Ford yesterday, so that we can begin that reopening. So thank you for your cooperation in that regard, and thank you to the other two governments and to the city taxpayers for funding the renovations to the George Bell Arena, which are going to make a real difference for people who live in the York Southwestern and in the western part of Toronto, and in fact across Toronto, because they all come to visit there to play hockey. So it's a good news day, and thank you for all the cooperation we've seen. And I think I'm to turn it over to back to Francis, who's going to get Jennifer to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. We now hear from Councillor Jennifer McKelvey, Councillor for Scarborough Rouge Park and Chair for Infrastructure and Environment Committee. Jennifer?
Thank you so much, Councillor Nunziata, and just thank you for being such a true champion for York Southwestern and really showing those of us that are how it's done, how you fight for your community. And so you're just an incredible inspiration in that regard and do so much for the local community. We've all realized how critical recreation is to the well-being of residents throughout this pandemic. We miss being together in these spaces, but we do know that a key component of ensuring that our existing recreation assets are well maintained and equipped. It's very important that we're keeping up with that state of good repair. Managing an aging recreation asset portfolio continues to be a challenge for the City of Toronto as one of the largest providers of free recreation in the country. And it's not glamorous work, but it's very important work that needs to get done. Projects like this one help address the backlog of aging facilities and provide an opportunity to make significant accessibility upgrades. The joint funding will increase the quality of the facility, the quality of life for community members of all ages. I'd really like to thank, like you've heard from Mayor Tory, all levels of government for contributing to this important investment for the George Bell Arena. Thank you so much, Minister Hussen. Thank you, MPP Hogarth. You're both community champions, and your support for this project is just incredible. And thank you so much again, Mayor Tory. We have done numerous announcements like this, and every single time you continue to champion accessibility and energy efficiency that get worked into these projects as we upgrade them to make sure that we have more accessible recreation space for Toronto residents. So thank you so much for championing this initiative.
Thank you, Councillor McKelvey, and I'd like to thank all attendees who have joined us this morning. Toronto's recreation facilities encourage people to get active, connect with each other, and develop skills. The George Bell Arena offers public skating, adult women's programming, and a summer league to the community. It's also home to the George Bell Hockey Association and Canadian Japanese Hockey League. On behalf of my ward, York Southwestern, I appreciate the investments made by all levels of government to ensure the George Bell Arena continues to provide recreational programs to our community members for years to come. Now, I'd like to invite members of the media to participate in a Q&A with the panelists moderated by Lavin Adisi.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you to all the speakers. We actually don't have any media on the line who have questions. There were some that were listening in, so we are done early so everyone can have a lovely long weekend. Thank you.
Thank you all,
Thank
and have
you.
a great weekend.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thank you
Bye.
again. Bye-bye.